about herd immunity now, because that really, you hear this all the time, we're really concerned about herd immunity. And we hear the term unvaccinated put others at risk and cause outbreaks. Well, I want you to Google or write down this name, Dr. Russell Blaylock. He's a neurosurgeon. He has been actively against vaccinations for many, many years, and he addresses this really well. He said, quote, "The vaccine-induced herd immunity is mostly a myth that can be proven quite simply." He said, "When I was in med school, we were taught that all of the childhood vaccines lasted a lifetime. In fact, we only got one back then. This thinking existed for over 70 years because they didn't really know what they were doing." That's my words, not his. "It was not until relatively recent that it was discovered that most of these vaccines lost their effectiveness 2 to 10 years after being given. What this means is that at least half the population, the baby boomers, have had no vaccine-induced immunity against any of these diseases for which they had been vaccinated fairly early in life. In essence, at least 50% or more of the population has been unprotected for decades." He says, quote, "If we listen to present-day wisdom, we are all at risk of resurgent massive epidemics should the vaccine rate fall below 95. And yet, we have all lived for at least 30 to 40 years with 50% or less of the population having vaccine protection. If you've had all 38 vaccinations, please raise your hand. All 38. All 38 that they're telling the kids have to have now. If you've had, approximately, if you've had 25 approximately, raise your hand. A few of you, maybe nurses in the medical field or dental offices, whatever. I think that makes my point. We've got a room of a few hundred people here, and there were only maybe 8 hands that went up. So what that means is right now, none of you are safe. You can have polio by tomorrow. You can have measles, whooping cough, okay? And you men, you can get cervical cancer. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had to say that. Anyway, that just popped in my head. But anyway, so this whole idea of herd immunity is a flawed theory. In fact, let's look back historically and see if vaccines truly do protect. The New England Journal of Medicine back in 1987 reported that the huge outbreak of measles in Texas in 1985, 99% of the children who got the measles were vaccinated. The Pertussis Outbreaks, the whooping cough, back in Ohio, 1993, according to the CDC official surveillance data, 90% of the children who got pertussis were fully vaccinated. Other pertussis outbreaks, where they give at least 3 to 5 pertussis vaccines. Israel, pertussis cases rose 16-fold between 1998 and 2004 when they started doing the shots. In 2003, Cyprus had outbreaks in spite of a 98% vaccine rate. Most cases were in children previously vaccinated for pertussis. 2009, New Jersey, 100% of the children who had pertussis were fully vaccinated. Adolescent and adult pertussis is rising. What used to be a childhood illness, we now have these kids who got the vaccination, now adults, and so it's rising in the adult population because they didn't have the natural illness as children. We have created a whole nother issue here where people are not, their immune systems have not protected them, and now they're adults. Chickenpox outbreaks. If you had chickenpox in this room, raise your hand. Okay. I'd love the camera to scan this. Keep your arms and hands up. I mean, almost every person in this room had chickenpox. You didn't die? You made it. And yet, they're calling this a life-threatening illness. Now, I will say that with every generation of children, there are those that are born a little weaker. Just like in the animal kingdom, a dog will have 8 puppies, one of them will be a runt and won't make it. That's reality, folks. Reality is that some children are going to be born weak. They're not going to have the ability. That's called survival of the fittest. Now, does that sound cruel? I'm sorry if it does. I don't mean to sound like I'm not sensitive to children who you know, might be sensitive and don't make it. But the reality is we're going to lose some kids sometime to something. That's the facts. And I'm not saying, I believe that with children who are unvaccinated and children who are vaccinated, we're going to lose some kids sometime. Do you understand that? So chickenpox outbreaks in Oregon, 2001, 97% were fully vaccinated, and that was in pediatrics. in 2004. Mumps outbreaks in highly vaccinated population. Across the whole United States in 2006, the Center for Disease Control said that 92% of the children who got mumps were fully vaccinated. This new California pertussis outbreak that you hear in the news, and we have these commercials now where the mother's holding her newborn and the baby's coughing and choking, and they say, "Mother, you could be the one who gives your baby pertussis, get the vaccine," right? Yeah. I'm now hearing that pregnant moms are being offered the pertussis vaccine while they're pregnant. And I've also heard from parents that after they have their baby in a hospital and they're being released, the doctors say, "We want both parents to get the pertussis vaccine." Well, guess what? According to all of my sources, Barbara Fisher runs the National Vaccine Information Center. And this is her quote: "Most doctors know perfectly well that getting 3 to 6 doses of pertussis vaccine or more does not give lifelong immunity to whooping cough. In addition, public health officials know that B. pertussis bacteria have been evolving and becoming vaccine resistant, making the pertussis vaccine much less effective. California whooping cough outbreaks were a different viral strain," end quote. The gentleman who discovered this pertussis outbreak, his name is Dr. David Witt. He's with the infectious disease specialist at Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in California. In early 2010, a spike in cases appeared at Kaiser Permanente, and it was soon determined to be an outbreak of whooping cough, the largest seen in California in 50 years. Witt had expected to see the illness targeting unvaccinated kids, thinking that they are more vulnerable to this disease. This is the quote: "We started dissecting the data. What was very surprising was majority of the cases were in fully vaccinated children. That's what started catching our attention," end quote. There are many, many books and resources out there where you can see that after vaccine programs come in, we have a huge outbreak of the very vaccination or the illnesses we're vaccinating for. This is from a book by Dr. Robert Sotilli. He was a chiropractor, Mandatory Immunizations in You. And he shows how across the United States, as we began to do the chickenpox vaccination, the measles, the mumps, and scarlet fever, which we never had a vaccine for, as we began to do these vaccines, all of the illnesses jumped up within 3 months. And by the way, scarlet fever went away without a vaccine, as did many illnesses of that era. So there's no evidence of herd immunity. Like I said, over 50% of us have never had more than 3 or 4 shots. These are the vaccines that have been introduced since 1902 is when the first smallpox was given, which we no longer do this vaccine. In the 40s, we started experimenting with the DPT vaccine. 1954 was the killed polio on the live, and you can see, you can look this up on Google, and now it's 38 injections by the age of 2, 55 by the age of 6. And there are other vaccines out there for other countries, people who travel in other countries. I highly recommend, if you're going to be traveling in other countries, in Europe, or doing ministry work, missionary work in other countries, get a book from thinktwice.com. Neil Miller, who's an incredible researcher, put together a book called the Vaccine Safety Manual for Concerned Parents and, I guess, physicians, and it goes into all of the vaccines, even the ones that you would do over in foreign countries. And consistently, he gives you all the sides of the issue. I really love it. It's a great book. So if you do that kind of travel, I recommend it. Congress passed the Adult Vaccine Act of 1998. I don't remember hearing about a vote. I don't think they asked our opinion. But they passed this, and now they recommend all of the childhood vaccines again for you adults. Did you know that? If you knew that, put your hand up. A few of you do, because you work in the medical field and you know. Well, look it up, Google adult vaccines, and you're going to see that there are 2 pages of vaccines now recommended, and at what ages. And it's all of the same ones that the children are getting. And then there's some new ones coming. There's cancer vaccines. They're actually working on an autism vaccine. No, I'm very serious. Right now, they are trying, the AIDS vaccine is in trials right now in this country. And, you know, I wonder who they're trying it out on. I mean, I would get in line. And, you know it's maybe not nice, but I encourage all those that love vaccines to get in line for us, please. Because they were actually trying to pass a law to make it mandatory that people have to get involved. And so I'm very concerned about our rights here. But the amount of vaccines, when I was born in the 50s, we got 3. And now, as you can see, it's climbed from year to year. And there's a huge jump. Between 83 and 2002, it jumped from 10 vaccines to 23. So there was a huge jump.